So here's what I'm gonna try to do. And I did this on Easter about 5 years ago. And it helped me personally kind of see these two kind of ways of seeing God. I'm not saying either are perfect, but the change helped me tremendously. And actually this Eastern Orthodox priest used it to explain the difference between Protestant and Orthodoxy. I changed it, but stole the illustration from him. So 2 ways to see the gospel. First, in the beginning there was God, the all-existing one. And God with the word created everything that we see. And God created an image bearer so that he could have a face-to-face love relationship with. But love demands a choice. And so the image bearer chose to eat of the forbidden fruit and to turn his back on God. And the image bearers continued to turn their back on God when Cain murders Abel and Lamech murders a man in the Tower of Babel. And God, who is holy and just, cannot have sin in his presence. So God turned his back on the image bearer. And we lived under condemnation because God is the source of life and joy. But God is not just holy and pure, God is also a father. So God becomes flesh. Jesus lives the life that we're supposed to live, dies the death that we deserve, and on the cross, God pours out all of his wrath upon the Son. The Son absorbs it, atones for it, so that the heart of the people could be turned back to God, and the heart of God could be turned back to his people. That's number one. When I understood God that way, it made God in my head, up in heaven, arms crossed, waiting to turn his back on me. But then something happened. Nehemiah 9. And this is the way I see it now. In the beginning, there was God, the all-existing one, who with a word created everything that we see. And God created an image bearer that he could have a face-to-face love relationship with. But love demands a choice. And the image bearers chose to eat of the forbidden fruit, and they turned their back on God. And they continued to turn their back on God when Cain kills Abel and Lamech murders in the Tower of Babel. But God came after his image bearer. When God came after Adam in the garden and said, "What happened to you?" And God clothes Adam with a skin and makes a promise to him, "Hey, no problem. The seed of the woman's coming and there's hope for you." But the image bearer turned his back again on God when Cain killed Abel. But God came after Cain, and God put a mark on Cain and said, "I'll protect you from yourself, Cain." But the image bearer turned his back again on God when Jacob deceives his dad, steals a birthright from his brother. But God came after Jacob in Genesis 28 and appears to him in a stairway to heaven and says, "I have a promise for you, and I'm gonna bless you, and I'm gonna keep you." But the people kept turning their back on God over and over again. So God gave to us the law that it might guide us back to him. But we chose the golden calf and we turned our back on God. So God came after us again and gave us the promised land that we might know his bounty and his goodness. But in the promised land, we chose idols and turned our back on God. And God came after us again and sent prophets to remind us of his goodness and his generosity. But we killed the prophets. And so God sent us into Babylon, that in Babylon we might have a heart to thirst for him and to know him. But in Babylon we chose not to return when he commanded us to. And so God comes and becomes a man in Jesus, demonstrating to us the heart of the Father when he hangs out with all the wrong people, the tax collectors and the prostitutes and the drunks. front loads acceptance of us, comes after us. A woman at the well who was married 5 times and trading sex for rent. He comes after her. A woman caught in the very act of adultery, thrown at his feet. He comes after us. A tax collector up in a tree. He comes after us time and time again. But we said, we will not have this man rule over us. Crucify him. And we crucified him. And we sinned our sins violently into Jesus. And even in that moment, what does Jesus do on the cross? He demonstrates the heart of the Father. Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Father, forgive them. And he comes after us. And he pays for our sins and rises again so that our hearts would be healed. Our hearts would understand the Father. And the Father says, that's not even enough. Because I'm never gonna forsake you, and here's my promise. I'm gonna take of myself, and I'm gonna put my Spirit inside of you, and it will reside in you for eternity, and I will never leave you nor forsake you. This is the gospel.